But anyway, what the hell was I going to talk about? Oh, yeah, I do have a spending problem. Like that guy. What's the guy's name who does this show? Like he was talking about. I was trying to impress babes, as I call them, and I made some mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes. That's how we learn. Oh, another thing. I have an announcement to make her let me do this, despite my various problems. Go check out official RM Brown on Insto and Tink Tank. Whatever that crap is. Oh, we're doing a giveaway. A free year of the Criterion Collection. Wow. Oh, we also might get Movie Rex by Lex. She does movie recommendations. She's really good. She might be on the show, maybe, if I could tone down the attitude. Man, I like having a good time. Bladron James signing out.
People have been like bombarding my comment section telling me to talk about like the Ethan Klein drama. Now, of course, if you go on social media in leftist spaces, it's all like spilling over. But honestly, when someone like sent me the links to like these videos that are like 2 and 3 hours long, I decided I'm not gonna necessarily talk about everything because there's so much stuff to do with like Hassan and different Twitch streamers being banned and stuff Ethan Klein has said. I do want to address it a little bit, but there is something else I want to talk about in this video, and it'll probably be the focus. It's basically one of the Twitch streamers that has been banned from Twitch for, I think, both anti-Semitism, allegedly, and also apparently got banned because they said US soldiers like maybe deserve to get PTSD, walked it back, clarified it, and then apparently still got into trouble with Twitch. And I posted a tweet, you can see it on screen here. I don't know why my tweets are going viral recently, just dumb tweets. I said, is saying US soldiers are bad now controversial or something? The level of hate she was receiving for saying this was just like absolutely insane. And I've actually been arguing with people, great use of time, arguing with people on Twitter, but allegedly leftists on Twitter who are veterans telling me why I'm so wrong to demonize veterans, including veterans who fought in imperialist wars for like America and the UK, right? And I want to talk about that because I thought it was an interesting topic, and I've actually argued with people before, and I find it very bizarre. It seems to be like a US leftist thing where they think because a lot of the military, although I wouldn't even say it's a majority, but you know, a fair chunk of the military are from poverty, they act like you can't actually criticize anyone for joining the military, and it's one of the worst militaries in the world in terms of the stuff it's done since the post-war period, and also a military that is helping Israel right now. You're not actually allowed to say anything bad about people who choose to join that organization, because part of the reason they might choose to do it is because they want free college. And I think that fundamentally exposes how poorly a lot of US leftists actually view globalized capitalism, in that they think because they are like near the bottom of the system in their own country, which is one of the, you know, most powerful and rich countries on earth, that means like their decisions are like really not their own at all. And it's actually okay for them to go sign up to this war machine and go destroy the lives of far poorer people in other countries, right? Just so they can get free college. So I want to talk about that today because it's something that's been irritating me, especially when you get all the hero worship in America. But I am going to talk a lot about Ethan Klein spiraling and basically going on a crusade against alleged leftist anti-Semitism, which seems like, you know, a bizarre thing to do when Elon Musk's Twitter exists, where I see right-wing anti-Semitism like without even looking for it every single day on Twitter. And also, the guy who owns Twitter is also an anti-Semite, and the only reason that ADL have said he's all right is because he's pro-Israel, and that seems to be a bigger problem at the moment. And if you're seeing all this stuff in Gaza right now, and you think now is the time to be like, oh, actually, all the pro-Palestinian people are actually massive anti-Semites, when still, although I've called this out on the left myself, I've made a whole video about people retweeting these like far-right accounts over Palestine. I'm really not actually seeing anti-Semitism in left-wing spaces. I'm mainly seeing right-wing people using the Palestine issue to push anti-Semitism a lot on Twitter. And I'm just seeing like the usual anti-Semitism from the right wing, but also I'm seeing a lot of anti-Semites who are supporting Israel. You see that a lot in Europe with traditional far-right parties who don't like Jewish people, but they support Israel because they actually hate Muslims more than they don't like Jewish people. So Israel, to them, they like it because it brutalizes Muslims in Palestine. So all of that coming up for you today, but also check out my fundraiser. We're over £7,000 now for medical aid to Palestinians, which also includes working in Lebanon as well. I really want to get this to 10,000 before we close it. So if you haven't heard about this yet, or if you haven't checked it out, please check out my fundraiser. So like I said, I haven't been following the new Ethan Klein drama. Obviously, I know he's going to war with Twitch and Hassan's community for being like anti-Semitic, right? And this is like a week ago, and I responded to this because this is the thing about this whole drama I'm not really understanding, right? So Ethan Klein is a guy with loads of skeletons in his closet. Like, it just said loads of terrible shit on every platform he's been on for a long time, right? So he has said he has to call out Hassan for this stuff, and I think a lot of his grievance with apparently the anti-Semitic left is they keep calling him a Zionist. And I'll play you a clip from a video I made a while ago. He basically thinks anyone who calls him a Zionist just wants to call him like a slur for Jew. So he wrote this on Instagram like a week ago, saying, I know you guys don't like me talking about Hassan, and I appreciate there's a lot of crossover with the audiences. It's impossible to ignore that the majority of these people are coming from his community. I think they were calling him a Zionist. It's something that he and his audience refuse to reckon with. Hassan's whitewashing of that Houthi kid was disgusting. I don't give a fuck that he's seen an episode of One Piece. I'd like to know why he's hanging out with a boat captain of a Chinese cargo vessels, a hostage. And as more info has come out about the kid being terrorist affiliated and being anti-Semitic, Hassan has refused to disavow him. The opposite, actually, he continues to prop him up. And remember the context for him bringing this up. This is during some of the worst atrocities we've seen in Gaza right now. Like very terrible footage. It's now the time he starts just banging on about this Houthi kid. This happened months and months ago, right? And also, like, I thought this guy was a Houthi. Apparently he isn't even in the Yemen military either. That's just what people said. But anyway, none of that matters. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, this guy that was interviewed by Hassan was actually in the Yemen military and was raiding just random boats, passing through like Yemen waters. So I was like getting mad about a teenage Houthi, one of the poorest countries on earth that just suffered from the devastating Saudi war in Yemen when your wife was in the IDF and you willingly became an Israeli citizen is really funny. Yeah, so like that's the thing for me, right? You willingly became an Israeli citizen. You saw what Israel was like and you're like, yeah, I want some of that for myself. I wanna join. How do I join? And then your actual wife was in the Israeli military. I don't think you have any high ground to start criticizing other factions in the region, especially if this, guy, let's say, was a fighter, a 19-year-old kid who literally grew up during like a devastating famine enacted on him by the Saudi regime with the backing of the US and Israel, right? I don't really think that's comparable with a white American guy seeing Israel and being like, yeah, give me. Like, I want to go live in an apartheid colony in the Middle East because it looks dope. Again, I don't understand the moral high ground here. Of course, this comes at a time where, like, the IDF are literally the most terrible military in the entire world, all the crimes they're doing. And we're really getting butthurt about, like, the Houthis in Yemen. I haven't seen the same anger directed at the IDF. Now, I think this is all in response to people calling him Zionist. So he shows some screenshots, I think from someone's subreddit. I thought Ethan said he wasn't a Zionist. Fuck Zionism, fuck Zionist. He is. And he writes, you need to ask yourself, what is a Zionist? Is it just someone who believes Israel shouldn't be wiped off the map? A lot of people would say yes. That's why the term is dumb and basically a slur at this point. It can be deployed against anyone. People are calling AOC and Bernie Sanders Zionists. So again, this is something he's been butthurt about for a while. I'll play you a clip. He was getting really mad that people kept calling him this, kept calling him a Zionist. Here he understands the term a bit more, but he doesn't seem to understand that it doesn't mean like you support Netanyahu, support everything Israel's doing right now, support everything that's going on right now. It doesn't actually mean that, but he seems to think that's kind of like the context of what it means. So if you keep calling him it, even though he doesn't explicitly support those things, that means you're actually anti-Semitic.
Waiting for any reason to call me, and by the way, call me a Zionist, call me racist. Why? Because I made one stupid, insensitive joke. If you're coming at me with those kinds of takes, you are ensuring peace will never end. Because you can't even have you can't even have any kind of dialogue where everybody isn't walking totally aligned with you to explain your reason for calling me a racist Zionist, which, by the way, Zionist is just another slur for Jew, being a Jew. You know how many people now calling fucking every Jew a Zionist? It's like, okay, just call me a Jew and get it fucking over with. Call me the K word, at least I'll know what you mean. It's just the truth. Not everybody, not all the time. And I'm doing, as an Israeli dual citizen, as someone who's deeply invested in the state of Israel, who's probably more sympathetic to the Israeli perspective than most people would be, I've tried so hard to pull myself to some kind of central ground where we can have a real conversation about this stuff. I'm pulled myself all the way to, outright saying that the Israeli government is committing. And so, but you still want to call me a racist and a genocide and a Zionist. Why would you call me a Zionist if it wasn't just, oh, you're a fucking Jew? When I have said all the things that you want to hear from me, I'm on your side as much as I possibly can be. And instead of, holding hands and having a real conversation, you spit in my fucking face and you call me a Zionist. If you call me a Zionist, you're anti-Semite. You know why? Because I'm not a Zionist, and I've made that exact profoundly, deeply clear. So when you see someone on Twitter, when you see someone in the audience calling me a Zionist, what they're calling me is a Jew. Because that's the only goddamn thing that means at that point.
So yeah, pretty insane statements there. And this guy keeps conflating people's criticism of him with apparent anti-Semitism and stuff. And yeah, Bernie Sanders is a Zionist. I don't know, that's not controversial. When he was in college, he literally went to an Israeli settlement to do a summer camp thing, right? He supports Israel's right to exist. Israel, which is built on top of another country, right? Ethan Klein, you went and became a citizen. So yeah, you support Israel's right to exist. You support the borders that they currently are. Where is your criticism of the current Israeli landmass? I haven't heard you say, let's go back to the 1948 border. Have you said that? No. So, but even if you did say that, you're still supporting Israel's right to exist on top of a known territory, therefore making you a believer of Zionism. It's different saying, as much as I don't think this should exist, I can't ignore that Israel's a powerful country and will probably exist going forward, and we just have to accept that as a reality, which I think most people can acknowledge at this time. While you want a one-state solution, secular state, pretty clear Israel aren't going to give up that power anytime soon, so you're probably going to have to deal with that reality. Yeah, that's one thing, but saying that you think Israel should exist, you willingly became a citizen, you've never thought about them giving land back in terms of going back to a smaller territory that they used to have when they were initially founded in the 1940s. No, you're just, someone who believes in it. So therefore that makes you a Zionist, and if people call you that, especially with what you're doing right now, it's pretty clear that you have an issue with Arabs and Muslims, right? So you're not really doing the Zionist movement any favors. I really don't understand, if you really care about what's happening with anti-Semitism right now, why you are targeting Muslim leftists and thinking that is the main source of anti-Semitism online, not all, the absolute fucking cesspool that is Twitter. I know he's acknowledged some of this stuff, but like not to the degree it is. And Israel is literally like a lightning rod for increasing anti-Semitism, and this includes mainly on the right wing as well. Like, go on Elon Musk's Twitter and see who is actually making anti-Semitic criticisms of Israel. It usually isn't left-wing people. And even he says here another story that this guy called Hutch, who probably shares the same position as Ethan Klein. You only have to look at his tweets from the start of what was happening in Gaza, or a month in. And he writes, the H3 Hassan drama is so nuts because to my knowledge, Ethan has already conceded so much. Palestinians deserve a state, Israel's gone too far, Netanyahu's evil, and all he asks him to do is stop cheering on terror groups and calling his wife a murderer. Pretty much. I mean, that is all true to a certain extent. I think that's a pretty charitable picture that's been painted. I wouldn't say that's all he's done. Let's not forget, this guy was cracking jokes about Aaron Bushnell straight away. He did it in like a private stream and then started doing it more on a public stream. A lot of that is pretty insanely gross and doesn't strike me as someone who isn't a Zionist, you know, making those sorts of jokes. So if we go on a little bit, he keeps talking about this streamer called Frogan, and he says he was doing this to show everyone that the harassment she was getting wasn't from him or wasn't directed from his community. It's actually because she said that US soldiers deserve to have PTSD. And he said he was only sharing these tweets on his Instagram to prove this point. I mean, I don't know if I really believe him, but here he is sharing a drama alert thing with Frogan talking about this. And this is what the rest of the video is going to be about, is people are like celebrating Frogan's ban. It's pretty clear this campaign against Frogan is just like pure racism. In terms of this take specifically, because if I said this, if I said all US soldiers deserve PTSD, do you think anyone would give a fuck? Do you honestly think I'd get banned from anything? Do you honestly think like anyone would even fucking register I'd said that? If I said that on a stream tomorrow, sincerely, even if someone clipped it and posted it on Twitter, I literally don't think anyone would give a shit. So you had like drama alert and loads of right-wingers sharing this, but let's actually get into what she said before we get into some of the reaction, which is like, of course, unhinged. And then I just want to talk about this because although loads of right-wingers are pushing this, like she deserves to be banned for saying bad stuff about US soldiers, there's been leftist arguing with me today, like similar sentiment of like US soldiers are victims too, which I just really don't agree with in most circumstances. But let's listen to what she had to say.
No pity at all for any fucking soldiers. Distress, thank you so much. I will never have any fucking pity for any fucking soldiers. U.S. military? Boo who? I hope you get PTSD. I do, the ones I'm like whatever about the U.S. soldiers are the ones that like acknowledge that like what they did was wrong. They didn't know back then. Whatever. You're a good person in my book. I'm like a Tom, thank you so much for the 10 gifted. The U.S. military that are like, yeah, like, you know, I did this back then, but now I know it's wrong. Like, I'm changed. Like, you don't deserve the PTSD. But like any other motherfucker, oh my God, I want my fucking Camaro, no student loans. Fuck you. I hope you get PTSD. And I hope you get no health insurance when you get back to America.
So I don't know about you, but like that seems like the coldest take ever. Yeah, if you join the military and don't acknowledge what you did was bad when you're in the military, that she wants you to have PTSD, right? I wouldn't like personally say that myself. I actually have a friend who was in the military and does have PTSD. So like, you know, it's bad. I don't wish that on anyone. But also you can see she's probably talking about people like Ron Kovic, famous, obviously anti-war protester who served in Vietnam, came from this like all-American background. Obviously, every American high schooler has probably read this book. Very good book, decent film as well, directed by Oliver Stone, and someone who dedicated their life to making sure people wouldn't end up like them, would be like brainwashed into going along with this empire and destroying other countries to basically profit an empire, and then coming home broken and being disposed of by the system itself. Like Ron Kovic outlines that very nicely in his book. But can I just remind people, conservatives are really mad about this. conservatives who say the most terrible shit about Palestinians, Muslims, conservatives who say the most terrible shit about the LGBT community, Drama Alert supports Donald Trump, Keemstar supports Donald Trump, and it's like, you're really getting precious about someone who said, yeah, if US soldiers serve overseas and don't repent, I hope they have like trauma from it, like psychological trauma from it. You're getting precious about that when you said all this terrible shit. And if we go into reaction, like Nick Merckx is one of these people. It's like, oh, this pisses me off. There's still so many of us in the streaming world that appreciate our veterans and those that serve this country. Thank you for our freedoms. We're grateful for our privilege. Saying something as gross as this while stuffing her face, enjoy the freedom to be able to say shit like this in a country she hates so much. It's like being ripped off. Ripped out of a cartoon. It's almost too corny to believe it's real. Conservatives love to talk about NPCs so much. How are you still doing the same military worship that's been going on for like decades and decades? Like being absolutely cut to the military. Americans just like blow my mind. But anyway, she got loads of hate for this, which I feel like was manufactured. Like, even if you love the military, I've seen lots of veterans saying like they don't give a shit she said this. She clarified and she said the US military has conducted some of the most horrific crimes against humanity in the modern era. In Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria and Lebanon and Palestine, my anger is directed at individuals who are currently championing these crimes as if they liberated my people. It's horrific and disgusting. The beginning of the clip was worded poorly, and I do apologise for that. I go on to clarify in the clip that I do not mean all of the military, but specifically those with no remorse. What I said was out of frustration, as they are currently bombing my family in the name of liberation. I realise that wishing people harm isn't the best way to talk about these issues, and I could have talked about these topics in a more sensitive way. So, what she said initially, I don't actually give a single shit about. Her clarification, absolutely fine. The clarification she made in the actual clip, absolutely fine. Like, I don't understand why people are so outraged about this, even if they disagree with it. I don't really care. Like, what she said wasn't completely outrageous. If you're serving, like, one of the worst militaries of all time, as we're going to get into, a lot of people like to hide behind class analysis, acting like every single person who joins the military is actually, like, a victim. I wouldn't say that myself. And, I was tweeting today some stuff about this, just to kind of like make the point clearer for people, right? Because I don't personally like using fictional examples about the real world, right? I don't personally like maybe comparing like the real world to Harry Potter or Star Wars. Like, sometimes you just have to make your point, right? So I write, oh, you think it's okay to wish PTSD on the brave soldiers of House Harkonnen? They didn't want to kill the Fremen or Arrakis. They actually just joined the army for free healthcare and spice. You do the same if you were born in Gaiety Prime. Don't blame individual Harkonnen soldiers for their house's atrocities. The fault solely lies with the Nabaran Fade Rother. They're just following his orders. And then just one more for you. Edgelord leftists want to tell you this Imperial Death Trooper is a bad guy. He's from a poor family in the Outer Rim and joined to get a college education on Coruscant. You want him to be a poor moisture farmer? He voted for Chancellor Valorum, by the way, and is no Palpatine fan. So I wrote all these tweets after actually arguing with other leftists about US veterans and how US veterans like aren't actually victims when you contextualize their actions in terms of like the role of the US military like globally, right? All the terrible stuff they've done in the Middle East, previously Southeast Asia, how they prop up like a terrible status quo, work with the Saudis to do what they did in Yemen, arm the Saudis in Yemen. Obviously, US troops are actually working in Israel right now, helping them out with what they're doing in Gaza. So if you are a US citizen signing up to the military, you are okay with doing those things as long as it benefits you personally. And before we get into my arguments with people on the left about this, so I wrote my dissertation for my history degree on Jimmy Carter's foreign policy, right? And what was happening, it happened with Nixon and Ford, but it was happening with Carter as well. They were changing the US military. So the US military obviously had the draft in Vietnam, that started getting phased out, and they wanted to make it like a professional military. So people who would join the military would really want to join for other reasons than like going overseas and fighting brutal wars. They'd see it as like a career path to get material benefits, and they started relaxing a lot of things to do like uniform, just make it a more like appealing place to go instead of like, and try and reform this image of what it had in Vietnam. Now, also having said that, I also recognize that the US system is actually designed to funnel people into the military. Now, what we're doing here is we're explaining why people join the military. And this seems to be a lot of people an excuse for joining the military. So I totally recognize that the US system fundamentally doesn't have a lot of social safety nets. So the US Army, or just the armed forces in general, seem more appealing because you can get benefits that you wouldn't traditionally get if you were a regular citizen. Healthcare, can get college, can get like different skills that the army will pay for you. Maybe, you know, you're struggling with accommodation or you didn't do great in school. There's not many options, so you join the US military, and maybe you don't think about its role in the world. Maybe you don't give a shit about its role in the world. You're poor, you're desperate, you're going to join the military. And because of the US system, what it is, you know, this absolutely huge colony that was built on slave labor, and it's of course a white supremacist structure. A lot of the poorest people in US society are actually people who are non-white. Like African Americans especially have disproportionately been represented in the military and US wars overseas because of the poverty being exacerbated in this group from things like racism. So you get a lot of African Americans who would join the military as also one of the first desegregated, you know, government jobs you could get. I think it was like 1948 they desegregated the military. So all of these things made the military more appealing. And like in a vacuum, we understand that, right? And I don't think anyone is going to argue that it doesn't make sense that certain people join the military. But even to what Frogan was saying in her clip, she's saying, I'm saying this about people who don't have any remorse for what they do. Because fundamentally, you are making a choice at the end of the day to serve in the worst imperialist military in the world that props up the other ones that are, you know, at the moment are worse, like the Israeli military. If you want to frame these people as victims, like, it just becomes so insane in my mind. Like, let's take this to British servicemen in Northern Ireland in the 60s and 70s, right? And you can make the same argument. A lot of people who join the military in the lower ranks in the UK are usually from poorer backgrounds and stuff. And you're really going to tell me British soldiers occupying Ireland and facing violence for doing so are victims of the system? Again, we can acknowledge the role poverty plays in pushing people into the military without acting like both the military is primarily made up of exclusively desperately poor people, and also first world poverty gives you no choice, that you just must join the military or you can't do anything else, right? So on my post about this, some left-wing people were arguing with me. So I want to show you their perspective. The veteran I was arguing with said, 1,000 reasons people join the military, often as one of the few outlets for upward mobility, education and stability. You can criticize the military complex we have and decisions that are made while recognizing that. And I say, you're choosing to serve a military that subjugates many nations in the world for US capital. Justifying serving in Iraq or Afghan with I wanted upward mobility isn't really comforting to the victims of US wars, is it? That is certainly part of the reason why the US military is a successful professional military, and that should be explained, but it doesn't serve as complete absolution for joining up in the first place. You could make the exact same arguments of becoming a cop. He says, no, you really can't. What you're saying is fundamentally not understanding how basic socioeconomics and access works for the vast majority of people who join. You're mad that an 18-year-old with limited options and understanding isn't thinking about world politics. I say, I'm not mad, but if they get ordered to invade another country and do it to get healthcare, that isn't an excuse. Again, it's an explanation of how the US military exploits poverty for manpower, which doesn't absolve its members or make them victims, globally speaking. Him saying, it's weird how you understand how exploitation works, for some reason think that exploited people should have full awareness of how global socioeconomics work. It's a very lazy way to think and approach the subject. And we basically just kept going back and forth on this point. But what makes this so fascinating to me is that these people arguing with me at this point don't realize you can use this to justify basically anyone joining any military, right? If you say a civilian becomes a soldier mainly for material gain, and their society might not provide them with loans for college or healthcare and stuff like that. So this poverty makes them join. So they're victims too. because the system never provided them with the basics. So they had to join the military, go overseas, and just ruin the lives of millions of people, thousands of people who live in far poorer countries. But then we can take this to, let's say, Vietnam under the French colonization. Plenty of Vietnamese joined up with the French and subjugated their own people for the benefit of the French Empire. And then you could say, well, those Vietnamese, they were poor, they didn't have healthcare, didn't have a good schooling or anything, so what do you expect them to do? You expect them to realize that it's bad to serve the French Empire? How could you expect that? While at the same time, some of the poorest Vietnamese in society were fighting the revolution against the Vietnamese collaborators and the French Empire, right? So people do know better. And I don't like this mindset of everyone who joins the military is poor, is a dummy, who doesn't know what they're getting into. Like, I understand, right? I understand why people join. I understand why they might be ignorant of what the US does, but at the same time, you're joining a military, and if you're joining like one of the actual groups that might go into another country to invade it, you're making the decision that if I have to, I will kill, and I will fight for this country, and I will do whatever they tell me, so they give me healthcare. That is you making, fundamentally, a selfish decision, and whether if you realise the wider context of this could negatively affect people far worse off than me, is just something you might learn when you get older. And like Frogan was saying, you might learn that, come out of the military, and then start being really anti-war, like Ron Kovic was. But that is why I use the sci-fi examples, because when you put it in the sci-fi context of like an Imperial Death Trooper, right? These like elite stormtroopers, and you start saying, well, he didn't know it was bad because he grew up like a poor farmer in the Outer Rim. Growing up in poverty is not an absolution for becoming a soldier. And I just think this is a very dangerous mindset, because as much as we like to analyse systems and everything on the left and realise how poverty drives people into these terrible militaries, you can't just act like humans are completely immoral robots, that there isn't anything going on in their head when they make that choice, that they don't know that there might be something a little bit controversial about joining the military, or what the military actually acts as. Like, no one can join the military, especially in a country like the US, and divorce that from what the US has done over at least the last 20 years, if not the last 70 years, and think that maybe I would be forced to do that too. Like, you're seriously telling me people who are about my age, like 28, when they joined the military, they weren't thinking about, I could be potentially sent to Iraq or Afghanistan, and in fact, many of them were sent to Iraq and Afghanistan, and you're saying that when they made that choice, because they were poor, they're actually the victims too. And when they go over to Afghanistan to occupy another country, and maybe do terrible things to the civilians there to keep them even poorer, they're the victims. Again, your mindset has to go into a more global nature of the US role in the world, where the US extracts resources from the global south and keeps countries poor for US capital, and the US military serves as an arm of that. You jumping into that military to get benefits that your other citizens don't enjoy as well, like, yeah, it's not an absolution. I understand why it happens. I understand how the system is designed a certain way so it can funnel people into the military, but let's not pretend there isn't a choice, or most poor people would join the military, or most people who are in the military would come from abject poverty, and that's just not the case statistically, that the people who join the military overall come from abject poverty. So do I wish all US servicemen who don't come out and become anti-war protesters like Ron Kovic, do I wish PTSD on all of them? No, I don't. For numerous reasons, like knowing people who've been like that myself, and I just don't want people to have terrible mental health. It's also just not a good thing for a country to have loads of people with terrible, severe mental health stuff that wouldn't get treated by the US government anyway, like going back to the Born on the 4th of July example. But at the same time, I've heard way worse stuff about the US military. It didn't seem like the hottest take ever. And leftists getting mad at this as well and joining in the dogpile of the right wing is just really, really funny to me. And again, serving House Harkonnen, serving the Empire, serving the IDF, serving the Saudi military, and serving a volunteer military like the US military, right? Just because you grew up poor or you want student loans, again, doesn't make you a victim. You're still making a choice, whether you understand it or not, that you're going to get material benefit from being part of an arm that keeps poorer people than you or indefinitely, just so you can have some benefits through the system, which you could also get through other means that don't involve potentially invading other people's countries and subjugating them. So yeah, that's basically my take on all this stuff. I'm gonna have a longer video tomorrow about that, like celebrity chef cooking for the IDF. That will be like a more structured video. This was just a more like casual one, based on my interactions on Twitter, which is kind of annoying because I deleted Twitter off my phone like all last week, and one of my tweets about Belfast went like insanely viral, so I had to go on it today just to interact with that. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.
Friendly UAV on station.
Taking fire!
Mission failed. Return to base.
He had all the surprise. He was the tape and shit. Like, no.
So I did not expect to be making a video tonight whatsoever, but as it turns out, we got our day 1, day 0 preseason patch notes. I don't know what you want to call it. It is the update for the first day of the game, and this changes many things from the beta. It changes many things about the game, and it fills us in on some information that we didn't know before. For example, what is going on with gobblegums? How do we earn them? When do we earn them? And how exactly that works. It also explains to us what weapon balance is going to look like in the game moving forward. So I thought, why not just dive into the notes, show you what's going on, and well, so here are the preseason, the day 1, the day 0 patch notes, whatever you want to call them. And it starts out with preloading. So you can preload the game literally right now. If you haven't done it and you're planning on playing on day 1, I really highly recommend you do it because it's going to take a little while. Then it goes into campaign. As far as campaign, we kind of know, I've talked about this a ton. They talk about the customizable safe house, a bunch of different things, but the big thing here is the campaign rewards. This is what they go into the most, and as you guys know, for basically basically beating all of the missions, and on top of that, doing some secret things inside the safe house, which we're going to be exploring tomorrow. Make sure you have notifications on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we are going to be multiplayer campaign. A lot of stuff going on tomorrow. Yeah, campaign rewards are a main thing for that. Then we get into zombies, and there's two main things that we learn from zombies here. So first of all, the main quest and all side quests for both maps will be enabled at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, or 6 p.m. BST on October 25th. So after the full launch is when we actually get access to those Easter eggs. Also, they announced that Der Wonderfizz will also only appear after round 25. Plan accordingly. Now, it also says this. Looking to bank some whimsical gobblegums in game, you'll earn these by successfly completing exfil at round 15 or higher. So from 15 to 29, 1, 30 to 44, 2, and 45 plus 3. So those are the whimsical ones. That's one of the top tier gobblegums. They don't really go in depth with when you will earn the other gobblegums. They just say that at random rounds you will be rewarded the other gobblegums. So honestly, I'm a little bit confused with that one, because I was thinking that maybe it'll be just at the end of the game, whatever round you made it to, you have a certain percent odds of getting different rarities. But this really doesn't explain that. It just explains the top tier, the whimsical gobblegum. Now at the end of this, it says before you know it, our third round-based zombies map will arrive before the end of the year. So they don't give us a date for it, but what they do is they explain that we will be getting it before the end of the year. So my guess would be season 1 reloaded. The current rumor is November 14th for season 1, which puts us around December 14th for season 1 reloaded. That's my guess. I don't know that for sure. Then we move into multiplayer. So as far as multiplayer goes, it goes into our new maps, new weapons, 33 weapons, but then we get into weapon balance. The first thing that they say is aim assist. So it says, in the multiplayer beta, we tested a change that disabled aim assist at close ranges. While this was a change in the right direction, we felt that this was a bit jarring when crossing that close range threshold. So we've adjusted our approach to linearly interpolate aim assist strength. This means that aim assist will be much weaker at point blank ranges and smoothly increase in strength as you move outwards. So it's not just completely gone up close now. So this is actually a buff to controller. So if you're a mouse and keyboard player, this one's not good for you, but that's how it's going to work. Up close, less aim assist. As you move further, more aim assist. Improved pistol and dedicated melee weapon swap speed, so you can swap to the pistol because it's faster than reloading. They've also slightly increased the weapon butt melee attack speed, so in other words, when you're not using a melee weapon. They adjusted the sway, bob, and overall weapon motions to improve point of aim when entering ADS. This is a big one because before when you aim down sights, it wasn't really the center of the screen, so apparently it's better. Additional improvements coming in Season 1, which again is rumored at November 14th. And then improved depth of field across all weapons, so it should just look better. Movement. They added a toggle option for corner slicing, so you can turn on or off corner slicing. They added an option to set and hold time to perform a dive to prone or slide, depending on your slide/dive behavior setting. So in other words, another option in settings there. And added intelligent movement option to set mantle assist angle from tight, medium, or wide. I don't totally understand what that means, but then we get into some map changes. So Skyline expanded the cover points around the hot tub area, added new planters, and added multiple cover options. So again, this is what it kind of looks like here. So this is after, this is before. So again, the big thing here is kind of the stairs that you are seeing. The one that we see here, this is after, this is before. So this one, predominantly, just the aesthetic of it, the lighting, but there's also this kind of little, I don't know, AC unit up here. On this one, Skyline, we have an extra planter on the left-hand sides like we have on the right-hand side. They also look better, I will say that. Another option here, there's this little cleaning device over here. Then we get into Scud. They adjusted bullet penetration values on the satellite dish, so they didn't change the satellite dish or remove it. They just adjusted the penetration. The concrete wall at the main Overwatch is now broken out, so let's just have a look. So before, after. I really actually don't see much of a difference here aside from what it actually looks like. Again, this is the before, this is the after. The predominant thing that I'm seeing is just kind of more bright and vibrant. Then we have, this is the satellite dish. So the big thing to look at here is this bottom ring along the bottom, completely in one tack. Can't shoot through that. Now you can shoot through when they're kind of standing in the middle of the dish. Rewind made cover improvements across multiple sight lines. So this one, this is before, this is after. This one, the difference is clearly a truck. Then we have on this one, this is the back alley. They just changed the direction of the truck. They also added in, looks like a forklift back there. This one before, after, they've added a box. So they're just adding in little boxes all across the map. Audio, we're excited to introduce the best in... Okay, I'm gonna get comments about this. So the whole pay-to-win audio thing, I did a video over on my second channel. I'll have it linked after this video and down in the description. The whole pay-to-win audio thing is interesting, but there's a lot more to its story, so check that out. Ricochet Anti-Chief, they have updated the kernel level driver for it. In other words, it should work better at PC detection at the very, very least. Also, machine learning is better on this one as well. Adjustments for future weapon damage and patch notes. So basically what they're saying here is that they are going to add a weapon adjustment layer to their patch notes. So again, this is kind of confusing, but you'll see as we get into it. If they're positively improving something or negatively, they are going to show us that. Because sometimes when they just say slowed or sped up or faster, sometimes those are good and sometimes they are bad. But the example that they are giving here is pre-patch and post-patch. So the C9 is the weapon that we are looking at here. So the damage remains the same at maximum damage range as well as the ranges. The medium damage also remains the same at all ranges, but where we see a difference is right here with the medium damage range. So it was improved to 27.31 meters, and there's a little up arrow there, as well as the far range here. We have the same thing. So in other words, they're just going to make it more simplistic for us to see in the patch notes what is improved and what's not with these tables, which I think is a really, really good thing to add. And then they just explain exactly how weapon damages and ranges work. So basically, they have just said that the one big thing that they are changing here is the damage ranges. So they're changing it to 3 damage ranges when applicable, as 1, 2, and 3 instead of just being named as close, mid, far, things along those lines. So in other words, there's just going to be close, mid, and far damage ranges, which is way easier to look at. Now, they say one last thing. As we progress through the future seasons, the teams at Treyarch and Raven will adjust weapons based on feedback and data to deliver the best experience possible for multiplayer and Warzone respectively. These adjustments may include shared Black Ops 6 weapons having different damage ranges between the titles. In other words, the stats, damage ranges, things along those lines will not be the same in Black Ops 6 as they are in Warzone. If you didn't know that already, now you know. It says, stay tuned for future updates and look for dedicated Warzone patch notes brought to you by our partners at Raven starting in Season 1. In other words, that is when the Warzone and Black Ops 6 integration actually is. So that is it. That is the day 1 patch. I'm curious what you guys have to say. If you like these kind of update videos and want to see them continue throughout the year, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, turn notifications on. We have so much tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed, make sure you have notifications on. We have videos, we have live streams, we've got it all. So yeah, make sure you stay up to date. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, peace.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard, and I wonder where you are. Mysterious, that's the part you always show.
He had all the surprise. He was the tape and shit. Like none of that worked. The only thing that worked was 4 years of Donald Trump and a world-changing pandemic, like a global shift. Brian Kilmeade running defense for that line is pretty awesome, though. I really like it. Anyway, let's watch this first. Like, let's get a let's get a better understanding of what the fuck Trump was saying. He also had like a classic bar apparently where he was like, why is the funeral of a Mexican so expensive? Don't pay that shit.
Very breaking news this morning, Robin. Retired Marine General John Kelly. He was Trump's longest serving chief of staff, and he is speaking out right now with things we have never heard before from someone who has served a president. He says Donald Trump fits the definition of he says that Donald Trump praised Adolf, demeaned American war heroes, calls Donald Trump a man who would govern like a dictator if allowed.
And George, this comes as more billionaires are entering the race, donating millions, including reportedly Bill Gates. Our team is covering both campaigns and all the angles this morning. We're going to start with the latest on the Trump campaign. And Rachel Scott is tracking it from North Carolina. Good morning, Rachel.
Michael, good morning to you. John Kelly was one of Donald Trump's closest advisors, his longest-serving chief of staff. And this morning, with just days to go until this election, he is now painting a picture of a former president and Republican nominee who has no regard for the Constitution or rule of law, warning that he would rule as a dictator if he could. This morning with the
What part of this is like moving low-key? Like I feel like not a single piece of this was a new revelation for me. I don't know. Maybe I paid too much attention to politics, but it's like who the f is gonna be like, wow, I'm shocked. You mean to tell me that the guy who said he's gonna be a dictator on day one for one day, but he's gonna be a dictator, also said it behind closed doors? Like, bitch, he said it in public. He said it in a rally. He said it in a fucking rally in front of his fans. And you know what they did? They went, hell yes, sir. Let's go. It's not like he ever hid this. Like, this is straight up what he wants to do. Not only is this straight up what he wants to do, but he's also like the only thing stopping him, I think, from getting there, this Kelly story on Trump wanting to be as close to an October surprise as you can get. Trump's own former top aide issuing a dire warning. Never seen anything like this. Yeah, except I'm losing my mind. If the Democrats thought that this was the October surprise, this is the least surprising October surprise of all time.
That'll teach him.
Virtually all of Trump's fans literally look at that and go, I like that. I don't know how to describe this, okay? I don't like that. I openly say that this is a problem, among many other reasons, but a lot of the base does not care. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if you could do an October surprise for Donald Trump because, I mean, this had all of the surprises. He had all the surprises. He was the tape and shit. Like, none of that worked. The only thing that worked was 4 years of Donald Trump and a world-changing pandemic, like a global shift that basically locked people into their homes. And when they were locked into their homes, their fucking relatives were dying. As Donald Trump went on television every day and was like, just inject bleach, you'll be fine. COVID is like, it's whatever. It's neither here nor there. Shut the fuck up. Yada yada. Ivermectin. Use ivermectin. Horse dewormer for everybody. All this shit frustrated Americans so much that they were like, nah, I can't do this again. I don't wanna look at the TV again. That's what worked. Now the problem is 4 years have gone by since then, and Americans are notoriously bad at remembering shit. And the Democratic Party is also kind of bad at running a good campaign and reminding people of how bad it was. So this kind of stuff is, I don't know. I don't know if it fucking moves the needle. You know what I mean? I just don't know. Because he would say stuff like this all the time while he was president. He said stuff like this all the time after he, was no longer president. He tried to do January 6th. It was funny as fuck, but like he did still try to do it. Luckily, it was only funny because they're so goddamn incompetent and stupid. But like, I don't know. I don't know what to like. I think people kind of have made their minds up on Trump. They know that he's like this and they like it. That's perhaps a much more damaging part of this story. Like, that's more damaging to American politics in general. There's going to be like long historical shifts happening in this country for generations to come post Donald Trump. So I don't know. I think through the insanity, we understate how dangerous this shit is, though. I mean, you are not going to be able to explain to like the median voter that's like swinging for Trump that this is damaging for them, because Trump was president for 4 years, right? And if they forgot about how bad it was, now they're just gonna fucking literally look at this shit and be like, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, he was president for 4 years. He was. And a lot of Americans remember what they choose to remember from back then. This type of stuff, on the other hand, I mean, who knows? This type of stuff, this type of shit, on the other hand, is in the opposite vein of like they are. This is, I would say, narratively speaking, the exact opposite of weird. Weird was such a good way to deflate the Republican Party's momentum, because a lot of that machismo revolves around making your enemies suffer. A lot of people were like, yeah, we are terrifying, and you want to vote for us for that reason because we're making these pussy-ass libs cower in fear. When they started saying he was weird, they were like, wait, whoa, we're not weird. We're fucking normal. We're not weird. We're normal as Weird deflated the fucking fears that the American population would have. But then again, I think simultaneously they thought, well, if we're making a suburbs play, then we can't say he's weird. We have to say he's scary and undemocratic. So they just dropped the weird shit. In my opinion, weird was solid. It was an incredibly solid way to message and be like, why are you focusing on this dumb shit? This doesn't help people. This doesn't put food on people's tables. You're weird for that. Weird was laughing at the MAGA cult. Scary is being scared of the MAGA cult. And the MAGA cult loves being scary. They don't have any issues being scary. They do also, on the other hand, have issues being laughed at. They don't like it. Now, the other part of this that is also stupid is that the Democrats, on the one hand, are like, these guys are scary. They're going to do scary shit. While simultaneously being like, these scary guys, we also are adopting some of their policies. We are basically accepting their framing on issues like immigration. That, in my opinion, is inconsistent. Like, it's an inconsistent way to run a campaign, which is why there are, in my opinion, alarm bells in terms of like alarming poll results coming out in terms of 4% of Biden voters in 2020 swinging in Trump's direction versus 3% of Trump voters in 2020 swinging in Kamala's direction. So Trump is still picking up more Biden voters than Kamala is picking up Trump voters, in spite of the fact that the Democrats have aggressively tacked right over and over and over again. So I just don't know. I don't know where this goes. I think they are hemorrhaging their base every single time they do this. Can we get your thoughts on this? I never knew you thought this. I do think this. Yes, we should replace oxygen with swag. I'm a swagapino, like Pinoy Gang. I really said this. I really did this. This is real. It's so funny thinking that I own a Tumblr account. Come on, chat. Yeah, Pinoy Gang. I'm swagapino for life. But let's get back to it.
The campaign entering its final days. Donald Trump's former chief of staff and retired General John Kelly with a blistering rebuke of the Republican nominee for president, calling him with no concept for the rule of law or the Constitution.
Certainly, the former president is in the far right area. He's certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of for sure.
Kelly describing how Trump would praise Nazi leader Adolf, who orchestrated the systematic murder of 6 million Jews.
I think Trump fits the bill on Americans so perfectly, which is, what is that age-old adage? I think it was a tweet where it was like, Americans only learn about World War II in terms of global history, and even then they don't know shit about World War II. And I feel like Trump fits that bill perfectly. He's like, he was strong, he was powerful, and I like that. We need to be more like him. He's like, doesn't know anything else, okay? Like, that's why I always thought it was very funny when people were like, Donald Trump has a copy of Mein Kampf on his bedside table. Like, you think this reads books, let alone Mein Kampf? Like, are you insane? There is 0% chance that this guy is like ideologically a Nazi.
He's definitely skimmed it.
Like, he doesn't care about anything but himself. Okay, he does not care about he's too much of a narcissist to be a ideologically committed. Okay, he just knows like the overall vibes of certain things. He's like, Blitzkrieg seems like a good way to take over. 100% people put the Wehrmacht generals on a pedestal, but remember they started losing from 1941 to 45 nonstop after blunder after blunders, which is why they all attributed to, but it's mostly a shared blame. It wasn't even Mein Kampf as a book of speeches. Yeah, I don't think so. Ah, yes, the age-old adage that is not even 5 years old. Okay, whatever. I'm presenting a Twitter meme as a age-old adage. All right, give me a break, dude. Anyway, interesting political analysis here. What do you think? What is the political analysis? Kamala is either going to win or lose this election. I agree. He was also a narcissist. Yes, many of these guys are. But I think beyond that, he very clearly was ideologically committed to, he was very committed to an anti-Semitic understanding of the world.
That was close.
Like, I don't think Donald Trump cares about anything beyond himself. Nate Silver called it. Breaking. Nate Silver predicts that Donald Trump will win the 2024 election. My gut says Donald Trump, and my guess is that it is true for many anxious Democrats. Nate Silver, here's what my gut says about the election, but don't trust anyone's gut.
Fuck your gut, bitch.
Okay, if Nate Silver's predicting a Donald Trump victory, I think Kamala's got this in the bag. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. I think that these guys are still, like, a lot of these dudes, I think, are still reeling from the massive disparity, the massive disparity in polls in terms of like in 2016 overall. Like, they're still reeling from that, so they're just like overcooking the polls, swinging it in Trump's direction. Now, that might still happen because Trump is pretty good at like randomly pulling turnout from areas that you would have never imagined. Okay, the guy that you talk to every day, your coworker, that believes in the most insane shit, okay, that only consumes Joe Rogan, that probably purchased ivermectin during COVID, like, that guy has never voted. He might vote for Trump this time. Like, he's very good at that shit. He is. So I think while polls, like pollsters in general, are, wait, oh, I know him? Yeah, I know all of your coworkers. I have met your coworkers, okay? Wait, what? You think they found the Trump N-word tape? You're about to see insanely desperate stuff from the Democrats. Expect deep fake AI-generated crap about Trump coming soon. Stay focused and vote. Journalist Mark Halperin, I've been pitched a story about Donald Trump for about a week that, if true, would end his campaign. By the way, excuse me, if you consider deep fake AI-generated crap to be insanely desperate, what does that say about the Republican campaign that literally did that with Tim Walz like last week? Last week, Tim Walz, there was a AI generated deep fake video that came out that was like, I was Tim Walz's student and he like had sex with me. He beat me when I was a child. And everyone was like, hell yeah, I can't believe it happened. It's like, dude, this is the fakest shit of all time. This is literally the fakest shit of all time. And they did that. They did that, and now I think they're projecting. That's all I'm saying. This was the quoted tweet. They blocked you, Jack Poso's screen cap. Yeah, it says they will deepfake Trump saying something he didn't. Screenshot this. I mean, they could be gearing up. They could be gearing up potentially. I don't know. They could be gearing up potentially for like an N-word tape or whatever. Or it literally is just, they're just saying that. Like, I don't know if the Republican operatives are aware that there is like something out there that's really gonna kill Donald Trump's chances. I also don't even think, I'm gonna be honest with you, the Trump N-word tape, okay, the Trump N-word tape, I don't think would actually hurt him that much. That's it. I don't think it would. It might even help him at this point. I don't even know what's going on with American politics, okay? But I just don't think it would. I don't think it would like hurt his chances But then again, I don't know. Americans don't respond to people being... Americans don't respond to people being until someone says the N-word. And even then, they're still like, I don't know. Did he say it with a hard R or with a soft A? Did he say it while reading Tom Sawyer? Like, never underestimate the average American's ability to find objectively behavior. Not that, okay? They will always find a way to be like, I don't know, this seems contextually appropriate. It was 20 years ago. You've said it too. Who amongst us hasn't said it? I said it last week. I'm not. It's like, really? Yeah, okay. That's cool. Weird that you would just acknowledge that. Okay. So, you know, there's a lot of drama, but let's see. But you know Trump is heavily pursuing black men as a voting bloc? Yes, dude. I know that. It's not as significant of a drop off, or like it's not that significant this is what happens when you're media brained, okay? You watch too much media and then you assume that the things you read on CNN or watch on CNN and MSNBC are prescient, important. Let me tell you why it's not, okay? Black men voting for Trump by 20% is still so marginal and significantly lower per capita in terms of the same exact demographic with the same exact educational attainment for white men and for Hispanic men, okay? That's it. Like, it's not that significant of a voting bloc for the Republican Party. But having said that, the Trump N-word tape, I don't know how much, I don't know how much motion it has at this point. Yeah, is black men famous for voting for a Republican unlike white men? Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so stupid. It's like, it's not. It's people hyper-focus on this, like, this marginal shift, which is literally smaller overall than every other racial group in terms of their voting patterns, especially if they have I can't even talk, especially if they do not have higher education, like a college degree. It's kind of silly. All right, let's see.
World War II. You commented more than once that, you know, that Hitler did some good things too.
Kelly.
Like what? Yo! He's like, the Autobahn. He was a big union buster. I like that. I like it a lot. No unions, but a lot of socialists in prison. Big fan. This is like the National Review guy. Whether or not he said it doesn't matter if he's saying it in other words daily. Exactly. Thank you. That is usually my perspective. Okay, that is usually my point, which is, why look for weird symbolisms to extract some kind of ideological tilt when they are on main openly communicating their desires? This guy wants to do militarized concentration camps for non-whites, okay? Sure, he's using undocumented immigrants as the substitute for that, but that's precisely what he's doing.
1 minute remaining.
And many of these people who he's calling undocumented, sometimes saying they're eating cats and dogs or any number of different psychopathic things that he says, are straight up documented temporary protected status migrants, as in they have the paperwork. So what is it then? If they have the paperwork and you're still calling them illegal aliens and you're saying they're, rapists and murderers, when the actual data shows that they do significantly less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens, then why are you saying this? There's got to be some other motivation behind it, right? Yeah, that motivation is white supremacy. I'm sorry, that is just exactly what it is.
His on-the-record first-hand account following similar reporting in The Atlantic, including a private conversation at the White House, where, according to Kelly, Trump asked why his generals couldn't be more like generals.
Well, I tell him that. I said, first of all, you should never say that. But if you knew what Hitler was all about from the beginning to the end, everything he did was in support of his life, philosophy. So so that nothing he did you could argue was good.
The Trump campaign calling that an outrageous lie. Just as the New York Times published their interview with Kelly, Trump was on stage in Greensboro, North Carolina, praising authoritarian leaders like Chinese President Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
He's smart. He's a smart man. He's a fierce man. I get along with him very well. Putin, these are people that are tough people.
Kelly insisting to the Times, if given the chance, Trump would rule as a dictator himself.
The fuck is wrong with Trump? He says shit like that, like it's like a positive. This is a tough man. Tough. He's real tough, folks. Like, so? Like, that's not what we need in leadership. At least, like, at least by what you mean by tough, which basically means like you fucking murder people. That's your fucking definition of tough, instead of like resilient. Instead of like willing to make the hard decisions. The hard decisions. Shut up. I've been drinking. Shut up.
Himself.
Oh, I think he'd love to be. I think he'd love to be just like he was in business. He could tell people to do things and they would do it, and not really bother too much about what the legalities were.
Kelly also says Trump often questioned why people would serve the country in unity.
Is it dangerous to compare someone who show me like Trump that people wouldn't necessarily see the connection because you present as a kind of normal guy on the podcast and you ended up normalizing? No, I don't think it's dangerous to compare Donald Trump to Adolf. What the dude? Why do people learn about history? Why learn about it all? Why learn about the Nazis at all? Why learn about the Holocaust at all? If not to understand how they got there, okay? And in order to never repeat it again. No, I will never abide by this principle of like, I will never abide by this principle that like, oh, well, it was like way more dangerous and way more unique than someone like Donald Trump, which many of our neighbors want to vote for. It's like, no, dog. That's the point. Your neighbors are turning into Nazis, okay? Your neighbors are literally in the early stages of the only thing that stops American from becoming a militant, mechanized movement in the same way that it did in Nazi Germany is the fact that they're too busy eating jalapeno poppers, okay? That's it. That's it. Straight up. If it happens in a serialized fashion where they don't have to fucking think about it, Americans will be on board. Trust me. If they can still eat their jalapeno poppers, if they can still get their treats in the same way, they will literally let it happen. They will not even think about it. They'll be like, yeah, whatever. Oh, what's that on the chimney back there? I don't know. Why is there so much smoke and a weird fucking scent? Why is ash raining upon this village now? You know? I don't know. Whatever. Okay, let's go to Chili's, big dog. You know, football's on. That's it. That's the American mentality. Check. Cream cheese or cheddar cheese filling for poppers? Ooh, both. How about both? Get dangerous with it. By the way, I say jalapeno poppers as a joke for those of you who don't know. If you're new here, I don't know, but I love jalapeno poppers. Obviously, it's peak American innovation.
Zach, fire!
Uniform and referred to service members who were injured or killed as losers and suckers multiple times, something the former president has repeatedly denied.
Is not wanting to be seen with amputees that lost their limbs in defense of this country.
This I 100% believe. Like, that straight up. I don't care about anything else. John Kelly, he's a giant piece of shit. Maybe he's lying. Maybe he's being honest. Out of every statement,
he ain't lying, bro. Why would he lie?
That right there is on the money. That is primo Trump, okay? He is already disgusted by like, he's already genuinely disgusted by like the average hog that fucking loves him. He is ashamed of them. Like, he likes the admiration, but he always wants to be at arm's distance. You can tell, like, he always like, get the fat pig off the couch and get him to vote for me. And they love it. They love when he calls them fat pigs, fat little piglets. But he is not gonna, he doesn't want to be seen around amputees. They're like, it is disgusting. I don't like it. I like my veterans without their shit blown off. Yeah.
He's fighting for every American who didn't want to be seen with them.
Kelly, a retired 4-star Marine general who spent 45 years in uniform, lost his own son in combat in Afghanistan. He was handpicked by Trump to lead the Department of Homeland Security before serving as his longest chief of staff.
General Kelly will go down in terms of the position of chief of staff, one of the great ever.
He says he made the decision to speak out now after Trump talked about using the military against what he called the enemy within.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
In a statement, the Trump campaign writing, John Kelly has totally beclowned himself, calling the stories fabricated, and adding Trump has always honored the service and sacrifice of all of our military men and women. More than 19 million Americans have already cast their ballots participating in early voting. John Kelly insists he is not trying to tell people how to vote, but he is asking this country to consider character over policy, George.
And not all comments from someone who served former President Trump. We're also learning, we have new reporting on who Trump is considering for a second term if he wins.
Yes, George, this is exclusive reporting from our teams here at ABC News. Sources telling us that Judge Eileen Cannon, the federal judge who dismissed the case against the former president for his alleged mishandling of classified documents, is now being considered for the position of Attorney General should Donald Trump win the White House. We are told this is all part of a list put together by one of Donald Trump's closest advisors, Boris Epstein. We are also learning that other transition documents also include several other controversial options, including Jeffrey Clark, someone who has pleaded not guilty after being indicted to Georgia for his alleged handling and participation in trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election. George, we have reached out to the Trump campaign.
Does this stuff work at all? I mean, I know that this is definitely the type of shit that works with like the suburbia voters, right? But like, oh, Trump hates the military. He's gross. Like all this shit. But like, so many people voted for him after he straight up said John McCain was a loser for getting owned, like for getting kidnapped by, not even kidnapped, like just getting held hostage by the Viet Cong. Like he just said, I like my heroes to not be held hostage. Like it didn't matter. You know what I mean? Veterans still overwhelmingly voted for him. Like I don't think that you are going TDS much. I can't wait to watch your live feed after the election. You think your TDS is bad now, huh? Dude, go for 06. I cannot begin to explain to you how little your life is going to move in a positive direction under a second Trump presidency. Okay? I cannot even begin to explain to you how much more Trump cares about someone like myself because I'm lumped under a different tax bracket than you, than someone like yourself. Okay? Like, I don't think you understand. I don't think you comprehend this. He does not give up about you. He only cares about corporations and the wealthy and a select few people that are sucking his dick. Okay? That's it. TDS, for those of you who don't know, is Trump derangement syndrome. It's something that Trump supporters used to say all the time, like, oh, you care too much about Trump. Like, if you have ever listened, if you're a Trump supporter, you probably do not have the mental cognition to understand any of the words that are coming out of my mouth. But if you're a Trump supporter and you're in here, you probably have heard me say a bunch of stuff about how Trump is not that different in very meaningful ways in terms of his policy than the average American. But also simultaneously, I've talked about how Trump has redesigned American politics in his own vision. Anyway, you can say TDS much all day, every day. Ultimately, what you fail to consider is that Donald Trump in the 4 years of his presidency didn't actually improve your material conditions even remotely. As a matter of fact, it made it worse. Trump's tax cuts, for example, that was one of the pivotal accomplishments of his legislative agenda, are slated to sunset in 2015 for you. Okay? You know whose tax cuts he made permanent? Mine. That's number one. Now, having said that, those tax cuts for you were already marginal to begin with. Did I say 2020? Did I say 2015? 2025. I apologize. Okay? His deregulatory agenda, his crippling of the federal agencies are going to make your life worse in a very meaningful way. Putting mass deportations, okay, creating private prison structures to at the federal level once again, specifically to concentrate undocumented migrants or people who are suspected of being undocumented migrants in dragnet procedures that they engage in is not going to improve your life. As a matter of fact, it's going to make your life worse. Okay? But it doesn't matter. I will never be able to explain this to you because you're a Trump supporter. So it doesn't matter. In your mind, you think, well, libs are getting owned. I feel better. But you don't. And you didn't. When he was president, you did not. Okay? Stop threatening MAGA hogs with a good time. They like that shit. I know. I'm moving beyond. I'm looking to a second Trump presidency, a second Trump term, and how it's not going to improve his life, just like his first term did not improve this person's life. That's my point. Why is jailing and deporting criminals bad? Remind me that. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that like every undocumented migrant was automatically a criminal. There are things that are considered crimes that are not that consequential. Okay, crossing over a border specifically to gain employment is not a crime that is as severe as like mass deportation. Especially if you lived here for multiple years, have a family here, have children here. Not being documented is a crime for me. Yeah, I don't know if you understand this, and you probably don't understand anything really. But the difference between an undocumented person and a documented person is just paperwork. You understand that? It's just paperwork. It's a very simple process. Okay? Not being documented is a crime for me. Okay. You have to move beyond this. Okay? You have to move beyond this and explain to me why you think it is bad that these people are here. The saying, a Trump supporter will eat a shit sandwich so that a lib can smell their breath sums up the mentality perfectly. This stuff for Trump doesn't work, and DNC never learns that. The people who vote for Trump don't give a fuck about him being or not presidential. I know. This kind of stuff is, I think, small fry. I'll be honest with you. In comparison to the much more consequential deregulatory agenda of Donald Trump and the significantly more consequential white immigration policy that Trump will be pushing for and has been pushing for. Because they cut corners, there's people who want to come legally and they take their place. That is, what? Here we have proof in the pudding once again that Republicans do not know a single thing about the causes that they supposedly are very passionate about. What the are you talking about? That is not how this works at all. Okay, they cut corners. No, they don't. Half the people that you're talking about that are undocumented migrants are actually not even undocumented. They are documented. They have TPS, okay? Something that Trump also offered them, including the Venezuelans that he calls, rapist criminals who are overtaking, apartment complexes in Aurora. Donald Trump literally extended TPS status to Venezuelans on his way out, okay? Haitians that Donald Trump also offered temporary protected status to as well. These people are legally here, okay? They have the documentation. They're not undocumented migrants. You are calling them illegal immigrants, even though they have the proper paperwork. If you are talking about all these people, I do believe that women and children deserve asylum, though. Oh, thanks, man. Thank God. This guy's like, yeah, women and children only, okay? Anyway. There is no finite amount. There is no like, oh, we simply can't process these documented immigrants because undocumented immigrants are coming over the border. That's not how that works, okay? As a matter of fact, put yourself in the shoes of a person who is growing up in Guatemala and they're like, there are no jobs for me here. There's political instability here. I am going to make the trek all the way to the United States of America so I can pick strawberries in a field in California for like 10 cents, okay? That mentality. Do you think that guy, if given the opportunity to properly go through the regular channels and get the paperwork necessary to be able to work and get gainful employment in a lawful fashion, would not take it? No. The reason why these people do it is because there is no legal pathway to immigration. As a matter of fact, our reactionary white anti-immigrant agenda unironically funds the cartels. It helps the cartels. It creates a system of cartels transporting these people over the border. Greg Kazar had a really good take on this. I don't know if someone can find it. I'm most likely going to have him on the stream sometime soon. This is an argument for illegal immigrants as they free up spots for legal immigrants in the queue. Yeah. Chatters that come in here to yab about illegal immigrants show that they aren't being affected by the migrant border crisis, because if it was a really crisis, you wouldn't be wasting your time hate watching on Twitch. Get a job, chatter. Yeah. The American immigration system, the legal process is pay to play. Okay? If you're wealthy, you can come in here immediately tomorrow. It doesn't fucking matter. If you're poor, you're okay. You're just never coming in. It'll take 20 goddamn years. And many people do not have 20 goddamn years to immigrate. That's it. Hate watching is still juicing Hasanabi numbers. Chatter is not very bright. I know. My haters are my greatest motivators, okay? All right, let's continue.
Campaign for comment. They have not gotten back to us short.
Right, and of course, Judge Kennedy, we've seen so much criticism from others in the legal community over those decisions in the Trump case.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired
Yeah, in the words of my favorite turkey defender, Eric Adams, haters are my waiters on the table of success. I have to pee. I'll be back.
four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him personally. One that will obey his orders even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States. In just the past week, Donald Trump has repeatedly called his fellow Americans the enemy from within, and even said that he would use the United States military to go after American citizens. And let's be clear about who he considers to be the enemy from within. Anyone who refuses to bend a knee or dares to criticize him would qualify, in his mind, as the enemy within, like judges, like journalists, like nonpartisan election officials. It is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf, the man who's responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans. All of this is further evidence for the American people of who Donald Trump really is. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is. From the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. And it is clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of who in fact vowed to be a dictator on day one and vowed to use the military as his personal militia.
It's a good deal that Democrats certainly don't have anyone that is remotely like Donald Trump on their side, including but not limited to a guy who literally is worse than Donald Trump, for the record. And I will say this, I will stand on this. Dick Cheney and the George W. Bush administration was more harmful to the planet than Donald fucking Trump was, okay? That's true. There is no other way to cut it.
We're talking about fascism.
Get very pissy about, and they did when we were talking about, are you saying the country shouldn't have their unique demographics, so a USA with 80% non-American population in 50 years is okay? What are you fantasizing about? First of all, when people come here, they become American, okay? You understand that, right? Well, you don't. You don't understand that at all. You probably don't understand that you are talking to someone who came here when he was 18 years old, as a matter of fact. I was born here because I'm very fortunate. I'm an anchor baby, but that's besides the point. I literally am virtually indistinguishable from the average American, and yet I came here when I was 18. What is wrong with you? There is nothing magical about, like, what zip code you started at, okay? I just want to say that the shit you were saying earlier is so important. My Mexican uncles defend their decision to vote for Trump by saying he wouldn't actually do that insane stuff he says he will do. Then why are you voting for him? Anyway.
To carry out his personal and political vendettas. Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable.
What the wildest thing about this is that these people will say, like, Donald Trump is Hitlerian, okay? Which is fair. It's correct. So why the f are you running on his 2020 border policy? Like, that shit was Hitlerian too. I don't understand. I don't think that there is an appetite for this, okay, in the Democratic base of support.
Mission time is
There is no appetite for this. They look at one poll that says 60% of Americans want mass deportation.
They must not put together right-wing
of Americans want
immigration policy.
Amnesty for undocumented migrants living on U.S. soil that haven't caused any crimes or whatever.
This is weird.
Right? And they just choose to ignore that other side of the poll and look at the mass deportation part and go, I'm so scared. If we don't do lighter version of mass deportation, we're How about putting up a fight for once, dude? How about standing for your values? You have no values.
And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions. Those who once tried to stop him from pursuing his worst impulses would no longer be there, and no longer be there to rein him in. So the bottom line is this. We know what Donald Trump wants. He wants unchecked power. The question in 13 days will be, what do the American people want? Thank you.
Vice President Kamala Harris will find out what the American people want. Let's bring in our U.S. correspondent Mark Stone joining us now from D.C. And Mark, great to have you with us. Look, Kamala Harris there, quoting from an interview I think John Kelly had given to the New York Times, perhaps others. He was Trump's longest-serving chief of staff. She talked about him describing Trump as meeting the definition of it, and also saying that Trump would want to govern like a dictator. Why has Kamala Harris come out now to say these things from this John Kelly interview?
I thought Sky News was conservative. Dude, the peak of British conservatism still doesn't hold a candle to like how nutty Americans get. American conservatism is in a league of its own. It's like, imagine if the entire right was the Reform Party, like in the UK. Reform Plus, you know? CNN says that the real are on college campuses. Wait, what?
If you're worried about it, and you're talking about Donald Trump, maybe open your eyes and take in what's happening on the American left.
Dude, CNN is so insane, bro. What are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing, dude? What are they doing?
Those are the
Let me address this, but I also want to keep on the subject that we're talking about.
Let me also just...
If you're worried about it.
The reals are on the college campuses, dude. Yeah, dude. The non-binary English major that's like what Israel is doing is really up in terms of baby murder. That's the real Adolf, dude. What the... Ah! Please tell me they push back. Well, I don't know if they can, really, because, you know, they kind of also believe that. So, yeah, the reals on campus are pro-Palestine folks like me, Jewish, who have gotten arrested for protesting. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Are the walls closing in? Yes. I do not know where we go from here, but I do not think that we are going to a positive direction. I do not think that the trajectory of this country is a positive one. I will be very clear with you. That should not stop you from, that should not discourage you from fighting a good fight. That should not discourage you from presenting your values loudly and proudly. That should not that should not stop you from, you know, continuing to organize in your workplace, organize in your communities. But, you know, things are not looking good. Misinformation and disinformation is at an all-time high. Half the country is hallucinating an alternative reality in which Donald Trump is this like patriotic figure who wasn't born with a silver spoon and actually cares about the American population. The other half of the country is also, you know, committed to the idea that the Democratic Party is actually not funding and facilitating it. Things are looking bad, okay? The Democratic Party is now pushed way past the point.
1 minute remaining.
The Democratic Party has pushed way past the point on right-wing policies beyond the positions that they had in 2020. They've adopted the framework of the Republican Party on issues like immigration. It's very, very dangerous. I fear that we are basically bouldering towards. I just do think that things will get worse in the short term before they get better.
Changing backs. And you're talking about Donald Trump.
Yeah, just really dire shit. I'll say this much. I think that I believe in my fellow man. I believe in my fellow Americans. I recognize that I think they know what's right and what's wrong deep down inside. Sometimes it is at odds with what the media is presenting. Don't say I don't think that's cold. I do. Like, you look at polls that show that they want a ceasefire, like, across the board. Overwhelming majority of people want it. Majority of Republicans want a ceasefire. But if you were to look at the media, it's like, you know, you could never find it, right? You would never find that information. They make it seem as though, I saw this, where is it? They make it seem as though this is like a completely ridiculous position. Anyway, So while they're calling leftists on air, they're writing sympathy articles about the Israeli occupying force soldiers who can't eat meat because of the shit they did in Gaza. I know. Let's see how my favorite Brian Kilme had to cope with Donald Trump's statements that he is taken for granted. Let's see what he's saying here.
Bottom line is, if you read H.R. McMaster's book, who is critical of President Trump in some of it and not in others, he talks about how Madison Kelly didn't like the president, and they didn't think he deserved the job, or they didn't think he was worthy of the job, and they went out of his way to make sure a lot of the things they asked him to do that they didn't like never got done. McMaster would be frustrated because he couldn't get their attention, and he would say, it's not your job to rein in the president. It's your job to do what the president wants. And then you factor in the fact that he runs his own company, coming from the business world, the first one we've ever had. It's not even a public company. And then he obviously has frustration. And I could absolutely see him go, now, you know what? It would be great to have German generals that actually do what we asked them to do, knowing that's maybe not fully being cognizant of the third rail of German generals who were Nazis and whatever. But he was frustrated with the...
Wait, what? Yo. Okay, we've moved beyond. This is how it starts, okay? First, there is the double Holocaust theory. Then, first, the American capitalist mind goes to the length of, well, the socialists also did their own Holocaust. Then they say, well, actually, the USSR did things that are significantly worse than the Holocaust. This is a cynical attempt to undermine and engage in Holocaust revisionism, okay? Then the last stage of that is the clean Vermont theory, okay? The idea that, like, well, German soldiers didn't know what they were doing. There was actually a lot of German soldiers who were kind individuals. They were just like unwilling participants in the Holocaust, okay? The last stage of this is just saying that they were good, okay? And that they were right. We are so close. We are so close to prominent figures straight up being like, well, you know, they had some good ideas. What the... Can you stop answering questions and play some music? No.
And I could absolutely see him going out, you know what? It would be great to have German generals that actually do what we asked them to do, knowing that's maybe not fully being cognizant of the third rail of German generals who were Nazis and whatever. But he was frustrated with the slowdown of
it wasn't just a slowdown, it was insubordination. And there is a culture within Washington, not just when it comes to the generals, who, by the way, should be fired after what happened in Afghanistan, is of insubordination in the sense that the bureaucrats run the government. The founders did not design this country to be that way. Unelected people don't get to run the country, even if you have 4 stars behind your name. And I think they were very frustrated that you have this outside guy that says, listen, I'm in charge now.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, the founders didn't design this country with a lot of things in mind, but I won't say it. That's crazy. Oh, can you please stop sending me the Benito Mussolini thing, okay? Have you seen Matt Lee talk about you? More streamer drama. This is my friend, Chet. He's memeing.
Since we are live streaming, and live streaming is, from what I can tell, mostly about conflict engagement. Hassan, I'm taller than you. You may be big.
This is true. He is taller than me. That's not even a joke. I asked him straight up. I was like, you bald? And he's like, no. Like, what a waste of height, dude. You and Osama bin Laden both. 6'7".
Oh my
no
God,
basketball skills. How dare you?
I'll tell you right now, he's a tall dude. But not that tall. 6'6". He's like, what, 6'4"? He's got the muscle. Smarter? Possibly. I could see that. Whenever I tune into the stream, you'll say a smart thing.
When you come in here, you ask me questions like this, you are basically demanding, like, Hassan, I want you to nut so hard that all of the other subsequent nuts that come after it will actually pale in comparison. You will never nut like that again. And after years and years of trying to attempt that same high, you will inevitably kill yourself because you know that you will deep down inside never achieve that same level of sexual euphoria. I hope that answers your question.
He seems pretty smart, but he's never, ever going to be taller than me. And that is something that you should consider when you're like, oh, who should I support? Have you considered supporting the tallest guy?
True. Streamer drama. Literally word for word, one of my roommates said that most people that became Nazis didn't know the bad parts, that if you, me, were alive during that time, I'd become a Nazi. No, I'd actually rather die next to my comrades than go to the blue. But he then said that's unrealistic. I mean, you don't have to fantasize about what you would be doing in terms of like another occurring, like where you would be in that process. You are literally doing that right now. If you see the in Gaza and you find it to be unconscionable and you work to try and stop it, well then there you are. You are not a part of the Nazi Germany regime. You're not. The people on the other hand that are like, yeah, I don't really care about it. Well, they are. They are a part of that, okay? We're living in it. That's it. You are currently in the process. You're currently in the process of like what you would do at the top of the hour. As I've said already, now that my contract is coming to a close, I might not run ads any longer. Having said that, however, in the time frame that I do, you still need to subscribe. And I hope you still subscribe regardless, even if I don't run ads. Okay, because even in the absence of a non-contractual obligation, I would still like for you to subscribe. Here's the ad right now. Uncle Grammy, thank you for the 10 gifted sub. Are you going to kick then? Can we still pretend and do segues? Sure. Like I won't run the ads, but I'll act like I'm still doing ads. I'll stop watching if you get rid of the top of the hour. You'd have to at least do something at the top of the hour. Yeah. Absent serotonin. Thank you for the 10 gifted subs. What's this about your contract ending? Twitch is no longer offering contracts to any streamer. They stopped it a year ago. I was one of the last, 2 years ago. I was one of the last contracts that they actually gave. I haven't figured out what to substitute it for in terms of like a fun initiative. Crush a watermelon with your thighs once a day at a randomly selected hour to raise your viewer count? Sure. Okay, but is it not harsh to say someone who's barely making ends meet working at a dead-end job as part of the Nazi regime for not caring about what's going on in Gaza? What? Dude, okay. You think people were suffering financially during the Nazi regime? Like, that's it. That's the same shit, okay? What do you mean? Not every single person was, like, ideologically committed to people that the Nazi regime considered undesirable. You know what I mean?
Another UAV destroyed.
Well, first off, because these comments by John Kelly are extraordinary. He is not a man who will be familiar to an awful lot of people, but he was familiar to Donald Trump. He was very, very close to Donald Trump, as close to the inner circle that you could get during part of his presidency. He's a decorated Marine general for many, many years, but then became chief of staff at the White House, and so he knows precisely how Donald Trump ticks, and he has given this interview both to The Atlantic and to the New York Times, in which he describes in quite remarkable detail what he thinks Donald Trump is like, and he talks about how Donald...
I keep fucking seeing shit on TikTok of people complaining about people voting third parties because of being against genocide and how Jill Stein is bad, and the comments never cease to not blame you somehow. I've literally seen 3 videos today with at least 1 or 2 comments talking about you like you somehow encourage people to vote for Jill. I don't care. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's like out of the shit that people lie about me, that is like the least consequential one, okay? That is straight up the silliest one out of everything else.
Donald Trump admired Hitler, that Donald Trump had said in one conversation, we should get some generals like Hitler had, and John Kelly had to ask him what sort of generals, like Germany had, I should say, and John Kelly said, what sort of generals do you mean by that? And he was talking about Hitler's generals. This is the sort of man that John Kelly says could return to the White House. And I think it adds to what we've heard so much over the course of, in fact, many years. There have been discussions and leaks and quotes in books. But what's different about this is that these former officials of Donald Trump are now speaking on the record. They are speaking openly. We can hear their voices. And he adds to what we've already heard from Mike Pence, the vice president, now completely alienated from Trump world. Rex Tillerson, Bill Barr, John Kelly, as I said, Mark Milley just last week calling him a fascist, Mark Esper, John Bolton, all of these, the inner circle of Donald Trump's first term. Now, I think what is also going on here is that the Harris campaign is clearly shifting its strategy. A few months ago, or a few weeks ago even, the strategy was all about the future, about joy, about the hope that a Harris campaign or a Harris presidency could give to the country. Now they are shifting significantly and talking about the threat to democracy, the threat that Donald Trump poses. I should briefly say that the Trump campaign has reacted to what Kelly said, and they've said that John Kelly is currently suffering from a debilitating case of Trump's derangement syndrome, and they said that President Trump has always honored the service and sacrifice of all our military men and women.
Hey, we are live with one of my favorite social media celebrities, I call you, Lex. Lex, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
For anybody who doesn't know what you do, I think it's like one of the most like perfect formats for, I don't know, any social media, but especially like TikTok and Instagram. And the format is, well, maybe you want to explain it. Maybe you'll be better at explaining it. How does it work? How does your channel work?
I mean, the bulk of what I do is I have people request movie recommendations from me, and then I look at their letterbox, I go through their 4 favorites, I look at what they've seen, what they haven't seen, and then I give them personalized movie recommendations. I mean, I do other stuff too related to movies, but that's pretty much my main thing.
Yeah, and you kind of like, what I like what you do is you kind of break down like, okay, what's the common thread here? People are like, I like Possession and Lost Highway and da-da-da, and you're like, okay, what's the common thread here? How do you do that? What's your, I mean, do you do that really quick? Does it come off right away, or do you have to like think about what's going on here? What's going on in this person's brain?
It depends on what the 4 favorites are. Sometimes I'm like, oh, there's a very clear theme here. Sometimes the theme is kind of concerning and I'm like, this person might need help. Other times it's like 4 totally different movies. Like they have nothing in common, but I love that because it's like, okay, they appreciate all different types of genres. So then when that happens, I tend to just be like, okay, you like this movie, you might like this movie. It depends. It's a mix between 1-for-1 recommendations based on each of the movies, or like a cohesive, this is the theme and these are other movies that involve those themes.
Yeah, okay, there's one thing, I saw this once, but I was curious like how often this happens. Somebody did, what did they do? This is clearly like a film nerd, a film obsessive. I am too, so no judging. But somebody was trying to get you, I feel like, with what was it? Werner Herzog eats his shoe 4 times. How often does stuff like that happen where somebody's trying to get you?
Well, that one, I saw it and I was like, wait, that's actually really funny. And then, I made the video about it, but the person did tell me that like, oh, like, I'm sorry, I can actually put my real 4 favorites up. I was like, okay, you can do that whenever you're ready and I'll get to that one eventually. I just want to post this one because I thought it was funny. So I don't even think that they did it on purpose to mess with me. I think that's just what they had, and then they're like, oh, oops. But after that, I had some people try to copy it, and it didn't work because the movie they picked, I don't even remember what it was. It was something I hadn't even seen. I was like, this isn't really funny anymore now.
Like Air Bud 4 times or something like that?
Well, I've seen Air Bud. I would have done it if it was Air Bud.
What would you recommend if I said my favorite movie is Air Bud? What would any good recommendation? Dogs, dogs in situations they shouldn't be in.
Well, the problem is, I'm like, I need to know what the other 4 are when you have just one movie, I'm like, okay, do you just like movies where like dogs play sports?
Right.
If it's other movies with animals, I'm like, okay, we could go in some different directions here. I have not seen the sequels to Air Bud, so that kind of ruins that.
Yeah, I definitely gotta watch the Air Bud sequels. There's one, I wanted to ask you about some specific movies. It seems like Lost Highway comes up a lot. Maybe Lost Highway is one of your favorite movies. Can you tell us, because it's definitely one of my favorite movies. Can you tell us, maybe like, people always do try to analyze David Lynch movies, and that's a weird one because David Lynch doesn't like talking about. People always ask him, what's the meaning? Like, what's going on? And he doesn't answer. And I think, for me, it's partly because he doesn't know, maybe, but it's also because he wants to leave it open to whatever you think it's about. But what's your like, why do you like Lost Highway?
I mean, Lost Highway is not even my favorite David Lynch movie. It's in my top 3, which I've learned a lot of people don't agree with that. People seem to think it's one of his worst movies for some reason.
Wrong.
I think it's extremely misunderstood. I mean, like, it's literally misunderstood in the sense that nobody understands David Lynch's movies. But everything about it, I'm like, this is on par with Mulholland Drive. Like, it has a lot of the same themes. Like the dual role thing, having this one character and then it's like another character. The sound design is incredible. I saw it when they put it back in theaters in New York. The soundtrack is amazing. It's got a scene that is hilarious, that stands out to me, but also a scene that I'm like, this will give me nightmares. So it's like everything you could ever want.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably one of the creepiest / funniest scenes in a movie when the cameraman comes up to the main character. That's one of my favorite scenes in a movie ever.
Oh, that was terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying, but it's also funny. I love when he's telling him to call it. It's so good, so good. People are saying in the chat that they love the soundtrack. The soundtrack's great. So give us your top David Lynch movies in order.
My top 3 in order, I don't actually have a ranked list of the rest of them, but I know for a fact my top 3 are Mulholland Drive, which is in my top 10 of all time. And then I can go back and forth on this one, but I will say my number 2 is Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, and number 3 is Lost Highway.
Ooh, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. Fire Walk With Me, maybe, well, no, maybe it's not that underrated because people love Twin Peaks and they're like, this is more this is the movie version. You get the full David Lynch in the movie. Full David Lynch version of Twin Peaks, maybe.
People hated it when it came out. It got booed at Cannes.
Oh.
It got bad reviews.
Yeah, because it's not Twin Peaks, probably. You know, it's not weird.
People were expecting more Dale Cooper, and then like they didn't get enough of him. A lot of characters. It was just very different. But I think that's part of what makes it brilliant.
Okay, somebody in the chat asks if you can give a recommendation for people who think Paris, Texas sucks. I mean, this is not really what you do. I think something sucks. What can you recommend for me? Somebody who doesn't like a movie. That's a twist.
I need to know why they don't like Paris, Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Did you see that new Wim Wenders movie, the Tokyo one?
Perfect Days?
Yeah, how was that?
That was in my top 10 last year, but that one, I could understand people disliking that one. Might dislike Paris, Texas. It's in my top 10 of all time, so I'm a little biased. But I need to know the reasons why someone dislikes it in order to figure out what I'd recommend to them.
Yeah, I know. Hey, Chatter, give us some more details. We need to get into your head a little bit more. The other movie I wanted to ask you about that, I don't think I know anybody else who's seen this movie, but Belle de Jour, I think is one of the maybe one of my top favorite. Can you tell us about that movie? Why you like that movie?
I mean, I feel like that one kind of ties in with why I love Fire Walk with Me and its depiction of a woman who, like, the psychological effects of her youth, how that plays out later in life, kind of. I know I've recommended it to people with Fire Walk with Me in their favorites before, but I mean, I'm a fan of the director, the star. I was gonna say that's the first movie I saw from him. I'm not sure, maybe not, but just, I'm really interested in the psychology of characters, especially women. So I just gravitate towards movies like that.
Yeah, that is a real, I feel like you get into some real psychological stuff, especially the opening. It's got one of the kind of most jarring openings for a movie too. Where you're trying to, I like that in movies when it starts you off, you're trying to kind of figure out what's going on too, is fun. Another one you get a lot, or I've seen more recently that you've been getting a lot, is Possession, and I feel like Possession has had like a kind of resurgence, people loving that movie recently, and I've recommended it to a bunch of people. If somebody recommends you Possession, like what does that say to you about them, or like what movies they might like if they like Possession a lot? And if anybody hasn't seen Possession, definitely worth watching. One of the, I don't know, closest to like an out-of-body experience I've had watching a movie, I think.
Possession is one where it really does, that's why I like doing the 4 favorites thing, because I've done a lot of videos for people with Possession in their 4 favorites. And I think there's like a kind of, there's so many different things you could love about Possession. So knowing their other favorites really helps. Like when I first started my account, I was going to do like, oh, your favorite movie is this, here are my recommendations, and just do one movie. And then I gave people the option of tell me your favorite movie or give me your Letterboxd username and I'll use your 4 favorites. And the 4 favorites thing worked out. And I was like, this is actually so much easier than just one movie.
Yeah, that's great. How, like, do you ever get any where you're just stumped, where you're like, I don't know what to recommend this person? Have you gotten any recently where you're like, I don't know what's going on, where they're maybe like so all over the place that you don't know what to recommend?
It happens a lot. Usually my problem is they've only watched like 200, maybe even less than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, I can't tell if your Letterboxd isn't up to date or you just haven't seen a lot of movies. Then I'm worried I'm going to recommend movies they've already seen. And like a lot of times they'll have a movie in their 4 favorites that's directed by like Quentin Tarantino, but then they don't have Pulp Fiction marked as watched. I'm like, wait, this doesn't seem like, I feel like your Letterboxd isn't up to date, and I just want people to have their Letterboxd up to date so that I don't like, because I've had it where I've had a whole list of recommendations and then I talked to the person and it turned out they saw like most of them. Like, why'd you ask me for recommendations then if your Letterboxd isn't up to date? So that's really the thing that stumps me the most, more so than what the actual movies are.
Are you like obsessed with movies? Like, how are you watching more movies now to try to keep up so you can, you know, give people more like deeper cut recommendations? Because that's one thing, like watching your channel, I'm like, wow, she does have like a serious movie knowledge. Like, how do you keep up?
These videos have actually cut into my movie watching time because I'm like, okay, I feel this pressure to make these videos, but it does take a lot of time, and that's time I would spend watching movies. And then